Okay. So now let's create an actual interesting cloud object, which basically stores a given expression. So we'll use CloudPut to do that. So here um, we call CloudPut with the first argument, which is an expression. You can use any expression to store, and then this is the name of the expression cloud object. So here we are storing now. So now is basically gives you your current time in Wolfram language. So let's try to store that in cloud and see how it's getting stored. So CloudPut returned this response, this URL, which is basically the cloud object which stores this expression. And if you click this, it basically gives you the date object. Notice that the response is not as what you say. Um, it's different in the sense that the whatever we store in the cloud, it gets stored in the input form. So if you evaluate the input form here, it will basically be same as what we see in the cloud. Okay, so this is one way to store it. So CloudPut so you are free to go to the documentation of CloudPut. It has lots of examples, but the basic idea is CloudPut takes an expression and stores it at a given location. For example, it takes an expression and a URI. You can also use one argument form of CloudPut, which basically, if you use, let's say, if you want to store any expression, let's say, list 1, 2, 3, and you don't provide any name, it will be an unnamed cloud object. It will store at a it will not be any named, so we call it as an unnamed cloud object. It stores at a its own, it creates its own name for the unique name, which you can see from here. It's a UUID, and it stores at that location basically in the cloud. So this is just if you don't provide any name of the name of the object. So yeah, that's basically how you add or put an expression over the cloud, on the cloud. And then we have a similar other side of function where you can read this stuff basically from the cloud. So you can use CloudGet for that. So how to use that? It's simple. Basically you call CloudGet with the date, which is basically your cloud object. So date is your cloud object which stores this now expression. So let's see what it gives. So when you call CloudGet over a created cloud object, it gives you the response. It reads from cloud and it returns back you this response. Okay, so just to give you an idea, you can also update your cloud object. You can see that now I am putting in another expression, which is basically the current time on the same cloud object. So let's see what we get. So this gives us the new basically new date. We can see it from here clearly, which is basically we updated the cloud object with the new date basically, and here in this evaluation, and then we get back the result. And the result which we got here in output 22 is basically different from output 20, which indicates that the object has been updated correctly. So so you can create an object and update it simultaneously. Basically, that's the idea. But yeah, this is basically the basic stuff, how to use CloudPut and CloudGet to create and deploy objects. Just to mention that in addition to CloudPut, we have other functions of deploying something, deploying your data on the cloud. It's hard to cover all these functions basically in this presentation, but you can we'll see a couple of examples of cloud export and cloud deploy, basically how to deploy some specific objects. So just to give you an idea, CloudPut can put any expression. If you want to copy basically any expression on the cloud, you can use CloudPut. But then you can use cloud export to export your expression in a given format. For example, if you want to export your expression in a given image, uh, in a given format, let's say an image, you can use the cloud export basically. Uh, so cloud export takes us another additional argument, which is the format. So you can provide a PNG or JPEG, any format with where then and then your expression will be exported in that format. And then similarly, we have cloud import basically to import the expression. We'll see a couple of examples, but just to give you a heads up, you have a couple of other functions to use from. Okay, let's see. We have now, we've covered basically how to basically put expressions over the cloud and read from it. Then we have a certain specific functions called FormFuction and APIFunction. So we'll learn about how to deploy those, but before we learn those, let's see what APIFunction and FormFuction does. So APIFunction, you can think of something as an, if you want to deploy an API, you can use APIFunction. And what it does is, once you deploy it, it will basically ask you for an input, and then once you provide the input, it will use that input to compute something from it. So in previous examples, we don't have any way to provide any input, right? We were just deploying an expression, but here we'll use the input in terms of forms or APIs, and then use it basically, um, what you say, more flexibly. So let's see how it is basically used. So let's first discuss the let's see the example of FormFunction. So you can think of FormFunction as anything where it asks, it's a form, like when you fill a form on a web page, you add some inputs. So it's similar to that one. Just to give you an idea, so this is the form. Like when you create a form, it gives you this nice handy list of rows, and you can enter anything and then click submit. So when you deploy a form, basically, then what happens is, you will deploy, you will see this nice handy UI in your web page when you open that cloud object, and then a user can input something which you can use to work on. You can use to compute on something on those inputs. So let's see what we are doing here. So we are using a form function which takes two arguments basically, which is one, the name, maybe name of the user, and then email. And what we are doing here is, this is called the body of the form function, where what we are doing is we're trying to send an email based on what user has entered. So for example, see this pure function here. So this is where the user inputs will be used. So what we will doing here is, we are sending email with subject as the username basically, or any name, and then we display the body as an email. So let's see how it goes. So when you evaluate this, you will see a cloud object called contact, and if we click here, we'll see this UI where it will ask for your input. So I'll enter my name and then email, any random email maybe. And then once I submit, it will evaluate what is there inside that one, and then basically it sends an email to me basically. That's the idea so of the form function. So it takes the input from the user, use that input, and to evaluate something. Here we are using those inputs to send an email to a given email address. So that's the idea. Similar to form function, we have an API function. You can think of API function as being used by programs instead of users. So for example, in form function, it is the user, like humans, who provides an input, but for API functions, it can be a program which basically provides all those parameters like email and the name. We'll see how we'll use those API functions, but this is just another example actually. To instead of in addition to form function, we can use API function here also. if we want if some program want to call your API basically instead of humans. We'll see those API function, more examples of API function, starting from the simpler ones, but this is just the overview of how you can use that. Let's see. Deploying a notebook. Okay, we discussed about deploying an expression using a form function or API function, and now we can also use certain functions to deploy a notebook. You know that one way to create a notebook on cloud is you just go to that cloud and create a new notebook. But then you can also publish a notebook programmatically from your desktop, or or using Wolfram language. So you can use Cloud Publish or Cloud Deploy for that. So here in this example, we are using Cloud Publish to deploy a notebook, which is basically this expression, which is a notebook which has 2 cells in it, and then this is the name of the notebook which will be deployed. So let's see what is the result. Okay. So here it's the, once you deploy it, you have this nice formatted, HTML page, which is basically your notebook. Right. Notice that you can also use Cloud Deploy here. There is no difference. The only difference is that if you use Cloud Publish, your stuff will be shared publicly. So if you want to share your notebook to, let's say a couple of users, or, public, if you want to publish your notebook, you can use that function. But if you want to keep your notebook private to yourself, you can use Cloud Deploy. So basically, you can, let's see, quit it here. Okay. So this is basically how you deploy your notebook. You can actually also use a handy function called permissions, basically, to check what are the permissions of the cloud object which you are creating. So here you can see owner, which is you can read, write, and execute over it, but then others can read and interact with it. So this is because you used Cloud Publish, so everyone has a read and interact permission with it. So it's basically a public notebook. So if you don't want to make it public, use Cloud Deploy for that. So we have the Cloud Deploy function which behaves similar to this. Okay, let's see. Right, so one important thing is cloud public and publish and Cloud Deploy functions basically by default deploy an expression in a notebook form. So you don't have to specifically use notebook here. Let's see how, for example, here we are publishing a chart, which is a bar chart, using a couple of example data here. Let's see. So this is a chart. So if we want to publish that chart, so you can use that Cloud Publish and chart. It will be published over. It will create a new cloud object, and then it will create a new notebook where you can see your chart is being added over it. So basically, you can use Cloud Deploy or Cloud Publish to to deploy anything, any expression in terms of notebook, basically. Okay. The question you might ask, or you might be thinking of, is what is the difference between Cloud Deploy and CloudPut, which we have discussed earlier. The one major difference is by default CloudPut just copies the expression in its own form. Like it doesn't copy or decorate it with the nice HTML which you see in the Cloud Publish or Cloud Deploy. So so if you use Cloud Deploy to publish anything to any expression, it will just use that expression. It will not display anything in notebook form. So for example, what if I use this example in a cloud, let's say CloudPut. What will happen here is it will just publish that put that expression, like whatever expression we have, it will just use that and copy that expression to the cloud instead of showing you this nice HTML page. So that's one of the difference between those two functions.